And that was just a free gift from Dick. We got this cabin in the woods in the mountains of Georgia. We spent a week or so up there for our food, and that was just a blessing from Dick. But this is a 20-year anniversary because the first was 2004. So John reminded me that I have this. So if you've been around for more than 5 years, you're still kind of the not sure. If you haven't been around for 5 years, I don't know if I'll see you in another 5 years.
That's right. That's right.
And sometimes you might need to even raise the bar and have a 10-year test.
Right. Amen. Amen.
Even in 10 years, people will come and go. People who used to come to this conference who aren't here anymore. People that I remember, were out on the campuses and out on. And for years they were faithful. Every week they're going out, and now they're nowhere to be found. So there's this 5-year test, and there's the 10-year test. Well, SOPA is passing, the 20-year test. Yeah, so that's 20 years of faithfulness. At least one conference a year, sometimes 2 a year, sometimes 3 a year. It's just been phenomenal, and we'd rather be through this conference. I remember Ruben when we first started doing these conferences, and Ruben was like, man, I wish we had a SOPA conference when I was a young man, because he didn't have one of these when he got started. And so it's just a blessing, especially to all the new people. My first 2005, I remember it was at a small, we had this for his ministry. John Duncan was there, his brother, and he was an inspiration to me for the campuses. Jim Gillis was there, Ruben was there, I was there, and I don't think J.K. was there yet. I think I met J.K.
The next.
Oh, I remember. Yes, it was just a real good conference. 2006 was when I came with other guys who were traveling the country. We were living in our vans, and so we stopped in at the SOPA conference. Man. But so 20 years of getting older. I was 20 years old when I first came to a SOPA conference. Now I'm turning 40 next month.
Wow.
And Dick said he was 40 when he first met me. So now, I'm his age from when we first met. My wife, and I was telling Dick and Kay this, my wife, I got this. I was like, hey, have you ever thought maybe about dyeing it? You look younger if you dye your beard, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in dyeing gray hairs. Like the Bible talks about the glory and the wisdom for a man in his gray hairs.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of growing old. I mean, many of my friends didn't grow old.
That's right.
So like growing old, badge of honor. That's a testimony of God's. When I turned 18 years old, I cried because I didn't think I would ever live to be 18.
Wow.
And now here I am, growing old, growing gray. I mean, that's a testimony of salvation of God. This theme for this year, this armor of God, I like that theme a lot because this is aggressive. This is manly. This is a fighting spirit. This is this is war talk. This is war language. And I think that's what Christianity needs to revive is the war mentality that we're in a battle and that we're in a war and that we're supposed to be fighters. We're supposed to be men. We're supposed to attack the enemy and to defend our families and to defend our society. That's the theme. And, when I was growing up, I don't know what happened in the development of society where now, I go to a restaurant and there's some 20-year-old waiter and he has a soft voice and he has skinny jeans and he's limp-wristed and what happened? Because when I was growing up, boys wanted to be men.
That's right.
We wanted to be tough and rough. We were tough and, we didn't play, two-hand touch in the backyard. We were playing tackle football,
Right.
So I still have a fake tooth from the 4th grade, because we were playing tackle football in the backyard. I got tackled into a pile of rocks, which I think was on purpose. And those were older kids. Actually, I fought with those kids a lot. And, but when I grew up rough. I mean, we were in elementary school, probably about 6th grade, 5th grade. In our neighborhood, we had what was called the pit. It was a sand pit. And all after school, kids would line up around the sand pit, and the first 2 kids that got pushed in had to fight. And they weren't allowed to leave till somebody drew blood or something broke.
Really?
And I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying, like, that was what I remember childhood, boyhood was like.
Wow.
That was boyhood, We were fist fighting and we were rough, and then we'd all hang out afterwards, and it was just, boys were trying to be men. And if there was a boy who was soft and weak, we beat on him until he toughened up a bit. Like that was part of the upbringing.
Yeah.
And something has been lost in society. But I think it was lost in Christianity before it was lost in society.
Oh, yeah.
There was this effeminate spirit in the church, effeminate men in the church, before we started seeing it in the world.
There was.
Because we are the light of the world, and we're, where the church goes, the world goes. Like if we're not being a light, to the darkness is going to get worse and worse. And so if we're not, so I think with these kids today, they didn't grow up admiring dad, trying to be like dad. I mean, I guess they just grew up without a dad, admiring mom, trying to be like mom. And so now you got these 20-year-olds talking like women, dressing like women, acting like women, because the only role model they had was mom at home. I don't know. Or they're just putting something in the food, And there's a biological problem going on from maybe something coming out of China. I don't know. They're weakening our military or something. Like, where's the male testosterone in these kids? It's just not there.
Turning the frogs gay.
Yeah, turning the frogs gay. So, I was a fighter before I got saved, and I always felt, even after I got saved, that God never wanted me to lose that fighting spirit. That there was something in that fighting spirit that God liked. It was kind of like the spirit of David.
Yeah.
I had been, before I even turned 16 years old, I had been in 24 separate street fights, fist fights, before I was even 16 years old. 24 is a lot of fights. That goes back to the first grade. My first fight was in the first grade because, there was this girl, and I was the white kid. This was when I was in the inner city. I was the white kid, and I was the minority there. There was this Hispanic girl who liked me, and so we became boyfriend and girlfriend in the first grade. But there was a group of like 5 black kids who didn't like that this Hispanic girl was dating this white kid, so they jumped me at recess. And I got beat up by these 5 kids at recess in the first grade until the bell rang. I remember joking, I got saved by the bell.
Oh,
But that was, going back to the first grade, it was fighting. And but I honestly, fighting was the only sport I was really good at. I relished in it. I wasn't a football player. I wasn't a soccer player. I was the worst kid on the baseball team. They put me in right field because that's where the ball goes the least. When we had like one batter left and we needed this point, and then they called my name. Everyone was like, because they knew I wasn't going to hit the ball. I didn't have enough practice. I had one of those stepfathers who only wanted to play catch with his Bible. I just didn't have, enough, off the field practice. But I had a friend. His name was Justin. I remember seeing him when we were older. I said, we were on the baseball team together. And I said, he's like, yeah, I remember. And I said, man, I was the worst kid on the team. And he was like, no, you weren't. That kid from New Britain was the worst kid on the team. I said, that was me. But fighting was what I was good at. I was quick to throw. I didn't win them all. Nobody wins them all. I lost, a good amount, especially if a kid had like long arms. I had this one kid, he just grabbed me by the shirt and pulled out his arms and was just banging on my nose over and over. And I couldn't reach him. I probably could have started punching his wrist or something, broken his wrist, but when getting punched in the nose repeatedly, you're not thinking right. Then he stopped and he's like, "Are you done?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not done." And so he beat me for a few more minutes. And I just, it was just, I didn't, he was a senior and I was a freshman. And it was, after that I used a bottle in a fight because there was another senior and I didn't want to repeat that incident. But there was fights that I won. There was in my town, we had this rivalry with the neighboring town. That's probably common, especially with the football teams. The rival football teams. Well, come Friday night or Saturday night, kids would be drinking and partying, and someone would be walking home drunk, alone. And these kids from the other town would start driving around trying to find some single drunk kid walking home so they could all jump out and beat him up. There'd be like 20 of them. So these 20 kids would just give this one kid a beatdown just because of he's from this town. That's all. It was just a rivalry between two towns. And one time, we were at 7-Eleven, and we went there to buy a blunt because we were going to go get high. And we realized later the guy who invited us to go smoke that blunt, he set us up for this. Really? So we get to the 7-Eleven and 20 kids roll up. Back then, they had black cars, tinted windows, chrome rims, speaker systems in the trunk. They claimed that they were some type of gang. They were in their 20s. And that was from that neighboring town. They roll up and they targeted my friend over some dispute they had, and rolled up on him and found out which one of you is Ray, and confronted him and shoved him into this huge mud puddle. And I was watching this. Now we had been in a fight just a week earlier in their town. And I went down swinging, but I lost. I had a concussion. The guy tackled me to the ground. I remember seeing his head, and I was just bashing his head in the back of the head as much as I could. And once I hit the ground, I blacked out. And I woke up in somebody's car. I was like, who's driving? Where am I? I'm freaking out. So a week later now, the same kids, same town, these kids now I realized they're jumping us, right? So they pushed my friend into this mud puddle, and I used to practice in my room fighting. If I ever got surrounded by people, what I would do, and punching like repeatedly, as if I was surrounded by people. I used to practice. I did some unorthodox things to practice too. I used to have this glass bottle. I would hit myself in the head a little bit, just to build up a tolerance to it, and harder and harder, just to build up a tolerance to taking blows. I'm not recommending this. I'm not saying this was good. This is just what I did, and this is what happened, And you do build up calluses and things. So, but when I saw push my friend into that mud puddle, and this was a tall kid, so we had long, lanky arms too. So I realized I needed to attack, and I needed to attack fast. And so I just started swinging on him, and he didn't know what was coming. So he ends up going down like this, and now he's down, which is just an easier target for me, and I'm just swinging on him. And then I feel people hit me on the back of the head, but my back of my head was pretty well calloused from that bottle, so it didn't matter. And I looked up and I saw, and these were thugs. I mean, wife beaters, and they're mean mugging us. Their face is angry. I look up and here's this guy. He's obviously going to just hit me, so I'm swinging, and then I come whack, and I start hitting him. And then I look over my shoulder. There's another guy. His head's right there, and I come whack with my elbow, and I'm just going. There's not much of a fight, so I back up. Give us some space, not a box, And he starts running at me with the hook, which is what you never do in a fight. You always come with a quick jab. I would always do a quick jab to the nose because that would blur up their eyes and disorient them. If you come with a hook, people see it from a mile away. So this kid's running at me with a hook. All I did was go like this. I moved my hips, but not my legs. So he trips over my leg, and I pop him right in the back of the head. Cars trying to come after us. We're hiding in the ditch, and they never found us. But the next day, actually, the kid that I used to work for selling drugs, he sees me, and he said, "Hey, Jess." I said, "Hey, what's going on?" He said, "I heard you got a fight last night with some of my friends." And I was like, "Oh, no. I didn't know they were your friends," I'm thinking. And I said, "Oh, yeah, what you heard?" He said, well, I heard you held your own too. You gave it to those guys. He said, I was just with him this morning. He's like, one kid, his nose is busted. One kid, his eye is busted. One kid, his lip is busted. Another kid said his back is hurting. So I don't know what you do to hurt his back. But he's like, you know, it looks like they were in a car accident last night, you know. And so I'm feeling good about myself at that point. And, you know, and again, it was this rivalry between our town and their town. And he was from our town. And that was a fight that I won. When I first went to Teen Mania Ministries, I met a girl from that town. I said, oh, I said, do you know so-and-so? She said, oh, yeah. Because I gave the kid's name. She said, those are, you know, that's one of my best friends. I said, oh. I said, well, he and I, you know, we didn't get along. We fought. And I told him this fight. Oh, one more thing. The guy who told me, I heard you held your own, he said, they were asking me all sorts of questions like who you were, where you're from. I told them you were from New Britain, your grandmother was in New Britain, and they wanted to know where your grandmother lives, but I wouldn't tell them anything like that. They wanted to know what side of town you were from. And he said, well, they asked me how old you were, and I told them you were only 15 years old. He said, the look on their face just dropped. He said, because these kids, they're 18, 19, 20, 21. He's like, they thought you were like at least 18 years old. They said, when they found out you were 15 years old, they got scared. He said, I just saw fear on their face. He said, I've never seen anything like it. And so then when I go to this, I become a Christian, I go to Teen Mania Ministries, and I met a girl from that town. She said that they were her friends. She knew that group of guys. And I told her the story of what happened. And she said, now it makes sense. She's like, I have friends in your town, and whenever I would invite them to come hang out and go to your town, they would never want to go.
Really?
He said they were, and they were afraid to come to my town. These were the kids that used to drive around jumping people, and now they're too afraid to even come into my town because they might run into me. So I was like, hey, that's good. That's my opinion. And but it was that type of fighting spirit of fearless, you know, just stand your ground and fight and go down swinging. That fighting spirit, I felt God didn't want me to lose. I had fights with other kids. There were kids, when I was a freshman, there was a thing about seniors. Seniors felt like they had the right to beat on you know, younger kids, right? And especially the freshmen. But I wouldn't have that. And so I got into fights with the seniors. And there was one particular group, our fighting back and forth was so bad that I just had fantasies of getting a gun, not at school, but out of school, just popping them one by one, and, you know, just fantasizing of killing them and getting away with it. It was just a fantasy. I never, like, planned it or, you know, took action. It was just, I hated these kids, and they, you know, our fighting back and forth was just so bad. And that I just wanted to, you know, in my mind, I fantasized of that. Right. But when I got saved and became a Christian, the key distinction that I knew I was a changed man was when they saw me and they tried to run me over with their car. And I got out of the way and I looked at the car and I was like, I want to jump on that car and break that window and like pull them out of it. You know, that's what I want to do in the flesh. But I don't. The Bible says turn the other cheek, you know, and so I just turned my back and walked away. I didn't do a thing. And that was what I knew. I said, wow, that's a change of character, because I loved fighting. It was my sport. I relished it. And then I see them. I have a friend of mine. His name was Chet. He was a rapper who became a Christian. He actually was signed by, there used to be this movie called Kid and Play back in like the 90s. And Kid had started his own record label and actually, you know, signed my friend to be on his label. But then he became a Christian, and throughout his album, and he was a white guy, so they never published it anyways. But he became one of my preaching buddies. We used to go out and preach all the time. But he looked like me. He looked like a street guy. So we're in this other town. We pull up at a Dunkin' Donuts, which is common in Connecticut, and we see these guys. These guys I used to fight with who were seniors, when I was a freshman. And now, they all have motorcycles, and they're driving around on their motorcycles. And I get out of the car, I see them, they see me, and I told my friend, I said, these were guys I used to fight with in school. I said, well, I got something for them. So I go to the trunk of my car, and, it was a big, back then I drove a LeSabre, Buick LeSabre, so it's got a big old trunk. You don't know what I'm going to pull out of this trunk.
Right.
I opened up the trunk of the car, and I noticed they all put their motorcycle helmets on. Like, what? They think I'm going to, take out like a pry bar or a bat or whatever. But I took out some Bibles and some gospel tracts. I kept those in my car. And I walked over to them and I said, hey guys, I know we used to fight in school and all this stuff, but Jesus really changed my life, and I think he could really do a good work in your life. So I gave them some gospel tracts and gave them the Bible. And I said, reading the Bible just changed my life. And only one of them, he was from the Middle East. He was from a Muslim family, but he said, wow, man, that's really, really big of you. And I could tell by the look on his face, that it made. It was an impactful testimony to him. And so, God can redeem your natural traits. I have a fighting spirit. I don't feel fear and intimidation in tight situations. I kind of like the aggression. That was something that always attracted me to Ruth, because he wasn't your limp-wristed church-going type of Christian. I first saw him from a video with Dick marching through New Orleans and Jackson Square with a bullhorn, preaching the fear of God and the judgment of God. And I thought, I was attracted to that type of aggressive Christianity, masculine Christianity. So basically what I'm saying is that God changed my fight. It's a different fight now. And a friend of mine not too long ago saw me on Facebook, and he was a friend from way back, and he saw me posting street preaching, and he said, what is this? He's like, is this like your new fight? Street fighter.
Wow.
I was known in my town amongst these people, street fighter. Now he sees me as a street preacher. And the Bible says in 1 Corinthians 16:13, it says, watch ye, stand fast in the faith. Quit ye like men.
Right.
Be strong to be men. And now we're going to quit ye like men. It means to act manly. Yeah, to act like a man.
Right, man.
There's no such thing as toxic masculinity. Masculinity is not toxic.
Amen.
In touch with their feminine side. They're not supposed to have a feminine side.
Right.
You tell your son to get into this feminine side, what do you tell them, to become a drag queen? Like men are supposed to be men.
Right.
And part of manhood, is to protect your family, to protect your wife, to protect your children. And that requires, a level of aggression and dominance, and authority, and, not to be weak, not to be limp-wristed. And so, I want to talk about the armor of God. I only have, maybe another 15 minutes here. And throughout, I guess I have 3 opportunities to speak. Everyone's ever to have. Then I have 2 more messages on God as a man of war, and then God at war. And so today I wanted to talk about the armor of God. Now the armor of God, my first thought actually was King David. I really like the story of David and Goliath. Yeah. In fact, I want to look up really quick. I wrote David. I don't know if I can find it real quick. But the story of David and Goliath.
Samuel, 1 Samuel 17.
First Samuel. Yep.
The story of David and Goliath is an inspiration to me. Here's a young boy who, he sees all the men are afraid of Goliath, and David has no fear, and I like that. But it's not just no fear; it's faith in God.
Yeah.
Because he says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine?
Right.
To defy the armies of the living God. So he's not only fearless, he has faith in God, and he's indignant, at this person's defiance of God. And he's a boy mocking the genitals of a giant. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine? He's mocking the genitals of this giant. I guess that was an insult in Bible times. Your mother was a Philistine, But this is, you can see the characteristics why this man was fit to be, the king. Why he was a man after God's own heart. Why he, the man who leads of the nation. That's the true king of the nation, right? I wrote a poem. See, back in the day, I used to write rap lyrics. The guy got sanctified.
Amen.
Occasionally I write, and they were dark lyrics. I remember the school, when I was back in 8th grade, the school was, they heard I was selling drugs, but I was taught by the guy I worked for never to keep your drugs in the locker, because they have rights to your locker whenever they want. So I used to go to the handicap bathroom. The first thing I did when I got into school, go to the handicap bathroom, I put my drugs up in the ceiling behind those ceiling tiles. And then if someone buys something from me, I'll meet you in the men's bathroom, in 10 minutes. And then with the handicap bathroom, get what I needed and go make the deal with him. So, but the school got into my locker in 8th grade because they heard I was selling drugs, but there was nothing there. But they got a hold of all my notebooks. And my notebooks just had my rap lyrics and things. But they took that to analyze my psyche. And it became a part of my file. And even when I got locked up and I went to a rehab, apparently they had shared my file with them because they told me they had read my lyrics and that they were disturbing. And so when I got saved in rehab, they're like, something happened to you. And these weren't even Christians. This was a secular rehab. Anyways, this is a poem I wrote about King David, because I do write poetry still sometimes. I called it Boy Guillotine. The blaspheming giant against God was defiant. Without a king's armor, the son of a farmer put a rock in his head over what he had said. That was all that it took to get the Philistines shook. The uncircumcised Philistine met David the guillotine. Who cut through his skin right under his chin. Using his own sword, he made sure not a word from the giant that was slain ever blasphemed again.
Right.
And so when he goes before King Saul tries to give him his armor. And it doesn't fit because he's a boy.
Right.
All he needed was that, 3 stones and a slingshot, which is basically, like a gun. So when I think about the armor of God, David had the armor of God, but it wasn't the physical armor. He didn't have a king's armor. He didn't have physical armor when he took out Goliath, but he had the spiritual armor. He had faith in God. He had the Spirit of God. He had the spiritual armor that is needed. But when you talk about the armor of God, this is the language of warfare.
Yeah.
This is the language of fighting.
Right.
This is a picture of aggression. This is a picture of battle. And so we have an enemy. The devil wants to kill you.
Yep.
The devil wants to smash your face. He wants to puncture your vital organs. He wants to destroy you. The devil wants to stab your organs. And so when we talk about the armor of God, this isn't a costume party. This isn't playtime. This is protection against an enemy that wants to slaughter you.
Right.
This is protection against the devil who wants to get at your vital organs.
Right.
I remember, when I'm talking to Reuben, about, the problems in the street preaching community. People come, people go, people criticize. There's division. There's all this, mess in the street preaching community. And he's like, that's everywhere. That's not just street preachers. That's everywhere. He said, and that's true. There's division. There's backbiting. There's gossip. There's just carnality everywhere. And you realize there's nothing in the world that you can't find in the street preaching community. There's been street preachers who have gone to prison for pedophilia. There's street preachers who have committed terrorist acts. There's street preachers who, anything that you can think of in the world, adulteries, affairs, drunkenness, drugs, whatever's in the world has happened in the street preaching community. And so we need to have the armor of God.
Yeah.
Because we're not immune, from all of the carnalities and sins of the world. So, that's obviously everyone's been reading from Ephesians 6, 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. So again, this is an emphasis on being strong in the Lord. We're not supposed to be weak. We're not supposed to be wimps. We're not supposed to be sissies. We're supposed to be strong.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God. I like VJ's emphasis. You can't just have some of the armor of God. Maybe you go to seminary and they give you the belt of truth, right? But what about the rest of it? They have their emphasis just on doctrinal truth. It's like you go to war wearing nothing but a belt, you'll be an embarrassment. You go to war wearing nothing but a belt, you don't have much protection there. So you need to put on the whole armor of God, that you might be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. We're supposed to stand against the devil. And, stand in defiance, the way David stood in defiance of Goliath. Stand our ground. That was always the thing in the street fighting world, was you stand your ground, you hold your ground, and there's laws on the books even in Texas about, stand your ground laws. And that's what we're supposed to do when the devil comes to kill our family, to kill our children, to destroy our marriage, to stand our ground against the devil. Obviously, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Like I said, it's a new fight. It was a fight against carnality for me, and now it's a fight against the devil. It was a physical fight before, now it's a spiritual fight. Against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of the world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Friends of mine, they felt that their son had a demonic spirit, and I was so grieved because he has all sorts of behavior problems of different things, and he's battled with this for such a long time. And when I heard that they said that, I just became so grieved in my spirit. I was still in Alaska at the time, and the kid I think is maybe only 10 years old or something, but they feel he was being tormented by an evil spirit. I just went into such intercession. Really fighting and interceding for whatever demonic oppression might be on this boy, whatever's targeting this kid. And for quite a few weeks. And I got report that he was doing much better. Much better. And then what was really interesting, when I got home, and he lives in our neighborhood, when I got home, he wrote me a letter and left it in my mailbox. And was like, welcome back. This is a kid I don't really know. But for whatever reason, he felt some attachment to me to write me some welcome back letter. And I think maybe it was spiritual, that I really helped to intercede and break the bondages that was on this boy. But, when I heard just reports that he has some demonic, oppression, I felt indignant against the devil, that he would target this boy, and I'm willing to go to bat and to go and fight with the devil and intercede for this child who was being targeted. And so we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Wherefore you take on the whole armor of God, that you might be able to stand, to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. We can do all to stand. That means you go down swinging. You do all that you can to stand. If you get knocked down, you get back up again. I did get into a fight with a kid. This was when I was really young, and I always fought older kids. I never fought kids my age, kids my size. They were always like 3 years older and twice my size. Yeah. So, I fought this kid in the back alley. I was only 13. He was probably 15. But I was drunk, like really, really drunk. And so I could barely, stand. I don't remember much of the fight, but what I was told was that he kept bashing my head into the brick wall of the alley. I kept falling down and then getting back up again to fight him again. And then he bashed my head into the brick wall just over and over again. I'd fall down and get back up until he just got tired of knocking me out and bashing my head against the wall and left. But I just kept getting back up and I would stay down. I did get a concussion and I had to go to the hospital because I went home, and I puked, and I guess that's a sign of a concussion, and I had this splitting headache, and my mother, knew that I had been in a fight, so she knew I had a concussion. But you do all to stand, so if you get knocked down, you get back up again. And that's sometimes when you fight the devil and you fight temptation and you lose that battle, you have to come back with a vengeance. You have to do all that you can to stand and get back up again.
Amen.
So you gird your loins with truth. Now this belt of truth, John emphasized that the way you wrap this. I kind of like the idea of a belt because a belt is something you can take off and use as a last resort. If you lose your sword, you can start swinging your belt. We used to talk about going all out, and that's hitting people with your belt buckle if you needed to. So you'd be swinging that belt of truth around and smashing people with the truth. But that's not really the way it works because the belt wasn't the same necessarily. But the belt of truth represents honesty, integrity.
Amen.
Grounding the believer in the belt can be a weapon in certain circumstances, but that's your protection against lies. The lies of the devil is what he attacks you with, and that's what he attacked Adam and Eve with. You need to stand in the truth, because the devil is the father of lies. So you need to have your mind on right. You need to have the truth in your mind, because that's how you can fight against the temptation, which is always a lie. Temptation says sin will be fun, sin will do you good. You're missing out.
Right.
Go party, go have some fun. And the kids I partied with, a lot of them are dead. Because, the fun time, it was just like, you remember the cartoon Pinocchio? Let's go to that fun island, and then they become, donkeys and slaves, It's like, the devil doesn't tell you the whole truth when he's tempting you to sin.
That's right.
So you need to know the truth. The breastplate of righteousness, which symbolizes living a righteous life, to protect your heart from evil. Your breastplate is protecting your vital organs. One thing they'll teach you as a Marine, because the Marines or the Navy SEALs, they have knives that they can use, for hand-to-hand combat. If you want to stab someone in the vital organs, you don't stab like this, because you have rib cage. And you have to turn your knife and stab like this to penetrate the ribs. So most knife attacks, if the guy doesn't know what he's doing, fail. Because he's trying to stab somebody like this, and all he's doing is puncturing the skin and hitting the ribs. You need to slice in between the ribs if you're going to get to those vital organs. See? Well, now you know. If you didn't know, now you know. And but what does a breastplate do? Like I said, this is not a costume party. This is to protect your vital organs. You're protecting your heart, protecting your liver, protecting your lungs. A blow to your lungs and your liver and your kidneys. These are death blows. And the Bible says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walks about seeking whom he may devour. When you think of a bear attack, you think of, a bear, he's biting through your rib cage. He's tearing off your ribs. He's getting to those vital organs. So this breastplate of righteousness, it's a body armor. Righteousness is body armor.
Amen.
Because sin is death and destruction. And then you have the gospel of peace. Like shoes. Shoes are protection too. Walk around barefoot for a while, it starts to hurt. Run barefoot, it really hurts. Your shoes are protection against the rocks, against the hard ground, against the cement. And especially the types of shoes these guys are wearing, these are leather straps. when I lawnmowered over my foot
Oh.
with the lawnmower,
Ouch.
and I tripped backwards on this, working on a property, and there was some debris behind me, and I tripped over it, and then ended up getting my foot stuck under this lawnmower, and it just sliced right through my foot and my shoe. I did not have sneakers on, which is good, but I did have leather shoes on, which probably gave me some protection, because whatever damage was done to that leather would have been done, to my shoe, to my foot, if I didn't have it. Leather is a type of body armor. In fact, people, before they had the knights, where they had these chains, the chainmail,
Yeah.
people went to war with leather. Yeah, leather is body armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I lawnmowed, I thought, I might have lost a toe. And I got to check if I lost any toes. And so I called, but then I was like, what people say that you pass out sometimes, I've never passed out in my life, but I was like, I don't know if I'm missing toes, maybe I'd pass out or something. So I better call my wife, in case I pass out. I said, honey, I'm going to check my foot just to make sure my toes are all there, And I said, and I'm trying to save money too, so I'm like, look, I don't want you to call an ambulance, or anything. I said, I'll drive myself to the hospital, unless maybe I'm missing some toes, then maybe I would need an ambulance, So I checked, and I was like, if it's just a cut, then I'm not going to call an ambulance. So I took my leather shoe off. I still kept it because it's all torn up. It's a souvenir. And it was just a cut. So like, okay, I got all my toes. I'm going to drive myself to the hospital now. So I drive myself to the hospital, but I have to use that foot to drive. It was my right foot, so I'm putting on the gas, putting on the brake with that foot, which is just making it bleed all the more. And then, of course, there's no valet parking at the hospital, so I got to go to the parking garage, and then I'm limping into the hospital, and then I walk up to the front desk, and they said, what's wrong? And I said, well, I lawnmowered my foot. They said, okay, go sit down. And so I went and sat down and waited, and then I was like, I did lawnmower my foot, like, I'm bleeding right now. And so they finally put me in a room in a bucket to catch all the blood. And, they just stitched me up. It was a miracle that I didn't sever any tendons. The doctor couldn't believe it. He had to look at the x-ray himself to confirm it. But shoes are protection, is what I'm saying. And it's the gospel of peace. As a street preacher, I have worn holes through my shoes.
Yeah.
But those holes would be in my feet if I didn't have them.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And so you need that protection. I'm running out of time here, so quickly. Shield of faith. Obviously, a shield is protecting you. But in war they had shield walls. The Spartans, for example. The Spartans, and the Spartans would line up, and your shield is helping to protect this guy and that guy, and you have a shield wall. And so your shield isn't just to protect you, it's to protect others, to protect your wife, to protect your family, to protect your kids. I like the Spartans. I'm Greek, and the Spartans were Greek, and that's where that phrase "come and take them" comes from. Was Leonidas was the king of the Spartans at the time, and the Persians told him to lay down his arms and surrender. Lay down your arms, and he wrote back, "Come and take them." That was the spirit of the Greeks and the Spartans. Come and take them. But you need that shield, and that shield of faith. To protect you against the doubt and the fiery darts. You 70 kids probably remember lawn darts. Those are dangerous. They killed people. Probably needed a shield for that game. But then you got the helmet of salvation. The heart is a part of it. And intentions, the will is a faculty of the mind. And so the helmet of salvation is over your mind. And like I said, when I was in that fight in that back alley, my head bashed in. I could have used the helmet. And then the sword of the Spirit. The sword is for stabbing, for slicing, and for blocking. It's also a defense mechanism. And so the sword of the Spirit. I had my throat cut in a knife fight back when I was a street fighter. There was a failed hit on a friend, and I saved his life. And we did win that fight, but the only reason he didn't slash my jugular was because my hands were up. And so once he got to this area, my hands were in the way, so he couldn't grasp my jugular, you know? And so there's protection in offense. That's why, it's a good defense. So that sword is also a good defense, especially because your breastplate doesn't protect your throat. You know what protects your throat? Your sword.
Yeah.
That's what's protecting your throat. And it's the sword of the Spirit.
Amen.
So we resist the devil, submit yourself to God, and resist the devil, and he will flee from you. That word resist means to set oneself against, to withstand. David Wilkerson said, all the devil wants to do is get the fight out of you. Because that's your defense against the devil, to resist him, and then he will flee. So we need to wake up every day ready for a fight. Just, you sleep in your body armor like a soldier in the trenches. You don't take it off. At no time do you take off the helmet of salvation or the breastplate of righteousness.
Right.
You sleep in this.
Right.
You wake up in this. You go to bed in this. You're ready to fight at all times.
Right.
Man, showering.
Like a soldier in the trenches. So that concludes my message, and I'll continue this series tomorrow.
Amen.
All right, give us about 5 minutes. We're going to get our last presentation set up with Brother Derek. We got to get our computer and